Back of the Pack Ultra Guy here. This is exciting. I have Brandon Lott on this week, and I met Brandon through a friend of mine. He said, "Have you ever heard of this race? It's kind of like the Iditarod." He says, "My cousin's doing it," and I said, "Like a dog race?" And he's like, "No, it's on." He's on his feet, but he's got to pull all of his own gear, and he started telling me how long it was. And I was like, I gotta talk to this guy because it's so cool. It sounded so amazing. And then I looked you up, Brandon, and I was like, oh man, this guy's super into ultra. And then so there was kind of a cool connection through your cousin, a buddy of mine. But we'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Brandon. If you just don't mind introducing yourself and telling us kind of where you grew up and how you found running and sport.
Oh, okay. No problem. Yep, my name is Brandon Lott, and I kind of grew up here in the Tri-Cities area in Washington, and I've been married for about 32 years, I think, so far now. And when I didn't start running until I was about 35, and wow. Yeah, when I was about 35, I was trying to lose some weight, and I was like, man, seems like the best way to lose weight right now is running. And so I couldn't hardly run at all, like down into the end of the driveway. And so I just started running a little bit more, in the mornings and stuff. And then I started doing some 5Ks and 10Ks. And then my brother talked me into doing a marathon with him. And when I did that marathon, it was a Timberline marathon, and it started at the top. It started at Mount Hood Meadows on Mount Hood, and it ran down Mount Hood and through the mountains, on trails, on the PCT, around rivers and lakes, and it was just really cool. And I was like, man, I got to find more races like this that are in the mountains on trails. And I couldn't hardly find too many more marathons like that, but I could find some 50Ks. So I started running some 50Ks that are on trails. And then I found a 100-mile race. I was like, oh man, that's like the ultimate challenge right there. A 100-mile race? That's super crazy. So that's kind of how I got into running ultras.
Right on. What was your first 100-miler?
Cascade Crest.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cascade Crest here in Washington, and it's only like 2.5 hours away, and I've run it 11. Well, I've run it like 14 times now, and I finished I think like 10 or 11 times, and because I really wanted this the 10-year jacket. I thought it was really cool. So once I started running it, well, of course, when I ran it the first time and figured out you can get a belt buckle, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then after 5 years, you get a silver belt buckle. And I was like, oh, man, that's really cool. And then I was like, well, after 10 years, you get a 10-year jacket. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So that's kind of like the race I've ran the most, for sure, the 100-mile race.
Yeah, isn't it funny, the trinket type thing that is like the cart in front of the horse that gets us to do these type things?
Yeah.
They'll post a picture of the buckle, and you're like, oh, I got to have that. Oh,
right.
A jacket? Oh, man, I need that jacket.
Yeah, some people ask me, did you get money when you finish? I'm like, no. But I got a belt buckle. And they're like, yeah, that's not that cool.
But did you get your jacket?
Yeah, yep, got my jacket.
You got it. Yeah, that's one that you always hold on to. That's awesome. So you've definitely have done quite a few hundreds, especially to get that jacket. Now, do you have to do it consecutively 10 years in a row, or just 10 times?
Nope. Yeah, luckily, just 10 finishes.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. Very cool. And you don't strike me as the type of guy who goes, "Oh, I got my jacket. I'm done with ultra." Where did you go in between there? Because I like I said, I stalked you on ultra sign up, so I definitely know you've been all over the place. But I'd love to hear about more of your races.
Well, I mean, I guess I have it's hard to know where to start. But when I ran the Cascade Crest the first time, this lady paced me for part of the race, and she was from Alaska, and she was telling me about her races, and she was telling me about this race, and then I don't know, we didn't talk too much because I was just like concentrating on trying to finish that race, and then I seen her again at another race, and so I was at the Bear 100, and that was when I seen her there. I was talking to her, and she was telling me about a race that she did up in Alaska, and how she was so cold that her eyeballs were freezing. And I was like, "Your eyeballs are freezing?" She's like, "Yeah." She had to like bivvy down and basically just hunker down in her sleeping bag because her eyeballs were freezing and she couldn't see where to go, and she didn't have her goggles, and so and she just waited for a snowmobiler to come by and pick her up, and so she had to wait several hours. And so she's telling me about this race and about her experience and stuff. And I was like, "Oh man!" And she's like, "You should come up with me and stay with me, and you can do this other race up there called the Susitna 100 because you have to qualify to get into this race that she was talking about called the ITI, Iditarod Trail Invitational." So I went up there. We trained together a little bit. I ran in the Susitna 100, and I had fun doing that. And it was like another race in the snow, pulling a sled. You got to have all your emergency gear with you, pulling a sled. So, and I had fun doing that. And so then I finished that race, and then the next year I basically had qualified to get into the ITI, but the ITI has two distances, the 350 and the 1,000. You of course got to run the 350 before you can run the 1,000. And so I ran the 350, and I got done with that, and I was like, "Oh, there is no way I'm running 1,000 miles pulling this sled." That was so brutal. And so several years go by, and I kind of get the bug again to like to go up there and run 1,000 miles. And I like tell my wife, I think I want to run the 1,000-mile race up there in Alaska. And she's like, "No, you don't." I'm like, "Yeah, I think I do." She's like, "No, you don't." And and so I don't know. I was like, "Yep, I think I do." And so, and it was COVID year that year. It was like 21, and so I entered the 1,000-mile race, and it was getting close. And then like a month before the race, they canceled the 1,000-mile race, and they dropped everybody down to the 350. So I went up there and I ran the 350-mile race again, a second time. And when I ran at that time, there was this one spot where I'm running down this trail in the snow, and it crosses a bridge over a little stream, and I fell. I slipped on the wood bridge, and I fell down. And I hurt my back. Ugh. And that was like about 100 miles into it. So then I had it was about 125 miles into it. So I have like 175 miles left to go. And when I got to the checkpoint, I was like, "Oh, I think my back hurts because of that fall I took." And so then I left the checkpoint, and then my back really started hurting, and it was just like a long haul to the finish, and a few checkpoints in between. But it has a 10-hour cutoff, and it took me, a 10-day cutoff for the 350-mile race, and it took me 10 days, and I fell and hurt my back like on the third day. Oh. So I had like 7 days to like just like pull that sled for seven more days with a hurt back.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when I finished, I was like, oh my gosh, I could never do that again. And so then a few years go by, and I'm like, I think I want to run 1,000 miles. And my wife's like, no, you don't. I'm like, yeah, I think I do. I think I want to run 1,000 miles in the snow, pulling a sled up in Alaska. And she's like, no, you don't. She's like, she's like, remember your experience before? And I'm like, yeah, but I feel better now. And my back doesn't hurt. She's like, what if you fall and hurt your back again? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I'll be okay. So I entered the race, and the time came. I got prepared. Because when you for the 1,000-mile race, well, for the 350, they have 2 drop bags, so you can put all your gear together, all your food, and it can only be consumables. So you can only put like batteries and food and hand warmers in your drop bag.
Okay.
And so they have 2 drop bags for the 350, and they only have 2 drop bags for the so they have only 3 drop bags for the 1,000-mile race. And
Wow.
the last drop bag is at mile 500.
Oh my
So
gosh.
after mile 500, you're basically on your own, and you got to send little boxes of food and stuff to the post offices in the little villages along the way.
What? This is
Yeah,
awesome.
that's how you get your aid. Basically, it's kind of self-supported, but it's like so. And then the volunteers go to the post offices and they bring everybody's little box of food and stuff to the checkpoint, and sometimes, I mean, just the volunteers could be just like a member of the village, bring it to a high school gym after 500 miles, and it could be at a little school, and sometimes your boxes don't make it. I had a couple times my box didn't make it to the checkpoint,
Oh my
to the
gosh.
to the um, post office, and but as you can imagine, at this point in the race, there's several DNFs, and so there's several boxes of people who DNF that are not going to get
Oh,
there. So there's like a whole pile of boxes
what?
of stuff of people who DNF before this point, and so that's just kind of like free for the taking. So you just like look in these boxes and see if there's anything you want. And I pretty much found everybody packed way better stuff than I packed.
Oh.
I mostly packed like mashed potatoes and oatmeal and stuff like that. And a lot of other people packed like really nice dehydrated meals. And so I ate pretty good after 500 miles. But so I did pretty good for the first 500 miles, and it was like me and this other guy from Ireland. We were kind of yo-yoing in first and second place. But then after 500 miles or so, my back started kind of hurting, just not from any incident, but just from like pulling the sled. And I think I kind of went out too fast.
Mm.
And I just was pushing too hard in the beginning. And so after 500 miles or so, I was just like, okay, I got to take it slower because my back's just like killing me. And so I eventually, I took it a lot slower. My goal was 24 days to do it in 20. It took me 29 days, and the
Wow.
cutoff is 30 days. And actually, it took me 29 days and 22 hours. So I mean, I was like really close to the cutoff. And if you run that the race. I mean, it's kind of like any race on a DNF. If you run it and finish it after the cutoff, you don't get a finishing time. So it would be pretty brutal to run that race and finish after the cutoff and not get a finishing time and not be considered a finisher. So,
I'd say you're out there for a month. It'd be
yep.
really tough not to get a belt buckle or a finishing time or whatever they give out. That would be very tough.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
Yeah. They don't give a belt buckle. They got like they give you a jacket.
oh,
You get a jacket. And actually you don't get a jacket. You get a patch to put on your jacket.
okay.
So, so I have a jacket that has like all my patches on it from the Iditarod, and they just give you like one main patch, and then they give you a silver bar for each time you run it. And if you
Wow.
run it 5 times, you get a gold bar.
Wow.
Because yeah, there's like some people who are pretty diehard crazy who have run it several times and have several gold bars on their jacket.
That's absolutely incredible. Brandon, I really can't wrap my mind around the logistics of this, the training. I mean, the how you're sleeping. It's so amazing to me. I'd love to dive in and hear more about the kind of day to day, because I can imagine you don't want to be going too fast because you're sweating too much and then you might get too cold. I don't know. I'd love to hear more
Yep.
about this.
Yeah,
This is
you
so
definitely
beyond my
maintain. Yeah.
comprehension.
Yeah, you definitely maintain like your sweat and your effort. You definitely maintain like your body temperature by your effort. So when I'm getting cold, I just like pick it up, and then like, oh, my hands are cold or my feet are getting cold, so I just like pick it up and start running a little bit more, or start running from a walk, from a hike, because of course you hike a lot. And but if you start getting too cold, then I just start picking up and start running a little bit more. And but then if you run too much, then you're right. You start sweating too much, and you start getting a little bit too warm, because you're right. You don't want to sweat too much and get, because as soon as you have to stop for something, and if you're wet, you just like really, I mean, you just like freeze. And so you just kind of maintain a constant effort to where you're just not sweating too much, because you're wearing the same clothes for 30 days. Uh, I mean, I basically wore the same. The only thing I changed was my socks, and I would wear the same. I would rotate 3 pairs of socks. Like when one sock, because you can't stop your feet from sweating, no matter what. Even hiking, your feet are gonna sweat. So I would like basically rotate 3 pairs of socks, and when one got dry, or when one pair of socks got too wet from sweat, which just like basically every day, every night or day or so, I would change into a dry pair, but it's only the same pair that I wore earlier, but just they're drying at this point. And I wore the same pants, the same underwear, the same base layer. Uh, Everything was the same for basically a month. And I thought, man, I'm just gonna stink like high heavens when I get done, when I finish. But it's like your body is almost like in a self-cleaning mode at that point. When you go for so long, it is kind of like it's like self-cleans itself, because I was not stinky at the end. It's weird.
Wow. And this is so incredible. I feel like when I first found ultra marathon, I feel like it was this super unique rabbit hole, and I feel like I've just been dumped into another incredibly unique rabbit hole of racing. I mean, I've heard of like people doing marathons and other events, um, in the snow, Antarctica, whatever, and this just pales. I mean, those pale in comparison to what I'm hearing. It's just, I really can't wrap my mind around it. I mean, I know I get
Yep.
cold. Being in the Phoenix area, it's 50 degrees, high 40s, and we're freezing. I can't even
Uh-huh.
imagine stopping out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, and it's negative temperatures or freezing temperatures, and you're eating sweaty, freezing. It's this whole thing is so amazing to me.
Yep. Well, and of course it's nice. The race has checkpoints, and some of the checkpoints in the first 350 miles, one checkpoint was like a nice lodge. You could like rent a room at if you wanted to spend the night. But if you didn't want to rent a room, basically they put all the racers in a little cabin. And I mean, it's like really not a great cabin. Um, it's just like bare bones. And then some of the checkpoints are just like a canvas tent out in the snow, and the volunteers are in there with like a little stove, and they'll boil or they'll warm up a can of soup for you. Um, some checkpoints are, like I said, a high school gymnasium. Some checkpoints are like a villager's house. I mean, there'll be there's like little volunteers basically that are just a member of the community that you run into, in the village, and they kind of basically put up runners in like little cots in their living room for a long time, for a period, for just because when you get to a checkpoint, just kind of like, as you can imagine, you don't like sleep. Don't usually sleep very long. It's just usually just like 2 to 4 hours you sleep, and then you take off again. But kind of depending on weather can kind of depend also when you want to leave a checkpoint, because there was a couple of checkpoints that I stayed a little bit longer at because I had to like wait out a storm that had came in. I got to this one checkpoint towards the end at White Mountains, and the volunteer was also a emergency responder, and he was warning me. He was like, I would not go out in this. He's like, I rescue people all the time in storms just like this. So you can do whatever you want, he said, but he says, right now the storm is at the level it's at. I would not go out in there. So I waited at his checkpoint for a while, but then it came to a point where I was kind of pressed on time, and I was like, man, if I don't leave real soon, I'm cutting myself real close on finishing this race. And so but he's like, well, what's more important, finishing this race or your life? And I was like, well, of course my life. I mean, when you put it like that, it's not that finishing this race isn't that important. And so then I called my wife and I says, I think we need to find airplane tickets out of White Mountains to Nome, and then I can fly back to Anchorage. And she's like, okay, I'll start looking. And then there was another racer that was getting ready to leave, and her name was Sunny, and she was on skis, and she says, Brandon, if you don't finish this race, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And I was like, yeah, I know, but the storm. And she's like, so I called my wife and I said, like, I don't need plane tickets. I'm getting ready to leave right now. And she's like, okay, be safe. And so Sonny and I leave this checkpoint, and it's pretty crazy. It's just like snowing and blowing, and we get up in these hills, and you can't see hardly at all. It's just white out, and the way you know you're on the trail is they have like little sticks in the ground that for the Iditarod Trail race or Iditarod dog race that races. It starts a week after we start, but so during the course of our race, all the dog mushers pass us. And so we follow the same course they do, and so their course is marked with these little sticks in the ground, and they have like little flags on top of the sticks, and so you can that's the way you can, and the little reflectors on the flags, and so that's the way you kind of know you're on the right trail. Plus, also you have like your GPS, Garmin, and then then you have it on the map on my phone also. So, Sonny and I were trying to stay on this trail, and we were told that there's a safety cabin at a certain point, and so we're banking on this safety cabin being at this certain point, but we can't hardly see anything. And as I'm going through the hills in the snow, I thought I could see a little faint silhouette of a cabin, and so I get there. I get there before Sonny does, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like so close, because if this cabin would not have been there, I don't know what I would have done, because I was getting cold, and I was even like trying to like stay warm, so I was like trying to move faster, trying to stay warm. I was getting cold. I couldn't see. The storm was just crazy, and I get to the cabin, and at the cabins they don't have hardly anything there. The only thing they have there is they have a stove, and some of the cabins have wood kind of stockpiled there, but some of them don't, because it was all used up. And so it kind of depends on the local villagers to stock the stoves at the safety cabins, and some of them don't get stocked enough. And so there's every once in a while there's a safety cabin on the trail, and the safety cabin is for the dog mushers, because they kind of have first priority at the cabins, because that's who they're built for, is for the dog mushing teams. Anyway, made it to the cabin. We kind of sat at that cabin a little bit, had a meal, and waited out the storm a little bit, and made it to the next cabin, the next checkpoint. Anyway, that was one point in the race where I thought, I'm not going to finish this race because of the weather. And there was like a couple other times I thought I wasn't gonna finish the race too, and because of weather.
I feel like I'm listening to a movie script. Like, right as you're describing this, it's such an amazing story and it's my ignorance, but I had no idea that this type of racing was happening. I know obviously about the Iditarod, and Disney made a movie about, Iron Will, I think it was called.
Yeah.
But someone on their feet doing this, it's completely outside of my, reality. So this is amazing.
Yeah.
So you obviously finished it, but you waited out the storm, and you got to the next checkpoint. But you mentioned that the gal was on skis.
Yeah, so there's 3 disciplines.
Okay.
There's 3 disciplines. There's foot, ski, and bike. So, and actually this whole event started out as a bike race, and then it eventually evolved into foot and ski. They added this foot and ski discipline as well several years ago. But yeah, it was mainly a bike race, and so they have these bikes with fat tires called fat bikes, and they're usually about 20, maybe 10 to 20 bikers doing the 1,000-mile race, and usually like less than 5 people on foot doing the 1,000-mile race, and there's only a couple years ago was the very first finisher on skis. Yeah,
it's
you
just
would think
like a telemark ski where they have the bindings. Yeah, okay.
Yep, pretty much.
Interesting.
And because there's a lot of spots where you can't ski very good, and of course you can't ski uphill, and you go over 2 mountain ranges, so it's really when you just have to carry your skis uphill, so that makes it really slow. I mean, because you're not only carrying your skis, you're carrying either a big backpack, because often the skiers have a backpack, or they can carry a sled, pull a sled. So you have to pull your sled and carry your skis at the same time. But the year I did it was the first year I think there was a 1,000-mile finisher on skis. It's not uncommon to do the 350 on skis, but to do the 1,000 miles on skis is pretty uncommon. In fact, I have a buddy that is racing it this year on a bike because he's going to be the first. He's trying to be the first person to do all three disciplines. He did it his first year on foot, and then a couple years ago he did it on skis, and then next year he's trying to do it on bike. And he's going to be the first person to do all three.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm just hearing about this, but it sounds like the three different disciplines would bring their own independent challenges. Like you were saying with the skis, you can't ski up the hill.
Right.
You got to take them off and carry them up there along with you. I'm sure it gets steep enough that you can't ride your bike up certain parts.
Yep.
It sounds like.
Yep. Well, and if the on bike the snow needs to be just about right, or you're pushing your bike a lot. If the snow is too soft, if it's too warm and the snow is too soft, you end up pushing your bike a lot.
Wow.
And so, but if the snow if it's cold, really cold, and the snow is really hard, you end up riding a lot. So and then there's like really quick bike times. But if there's snow soft, they're really slow bike times, and you push your bike a lot. And when you're biking, you have to wear kind of like bigger boots because your feet get cold easy. So you have to wear big boots when you bike. And so when it's not good enough, when the trail's not good enough to ride, and you got to push your bike in these big boots. So that's tough.
Yeah, that begs the question, Brandon. What kind of gear does the runner? I can't imagine it's running shoes. It's probably some type of hybrid. I'd love to hear about the gear that you use.
Well,
it's just so crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, as far as shoes are concerned, I wore Hoka Speedgoat mids with spikes in them.
Okay.
And actually, this last race, the mids started rubbing my ankles really bad in the very beginning, and I don't know why. I mean, I ran in them a lot before, and so, but at the beginning of the race, the mids started hurting my ankles and started rubbing them really bad, and gave me like really big swollen ankles. So I had to cut the mids off, the high top part of the shoe off, and then I called my wife and I said, is there any way you could send me a new pair of shoes to the checkpoint in McGrath? And McGrath is the finishing point for the 350-mile race, but it's just a checkpoint for the 1,000-mile race. And so I talked to the race director, and they let me send a pair of new shoes. Let my wife send me a pair of new shoes because there's a running store in Anchorage called the Skinny Raven, and my wife contacted Skinny Raven, got a new pair of Hoka's Speed Goats, just like regular low top Gore-Tex Hoka mids with spikes on them, got sent to me to the McGrath checkpoint at mile 350. And I wore those the rest of the way. But yeah, having spikes on the shoes really helps because a lot of the race is running on frozen rivers. So you're running on frozen rivers a lot. And most of the time those rivers are packed with snow. But every once in a while, you'll get to a wind-blown spot where the river's just like ice. And it's just like either you got to wear like micro spikes, or you got to have spikes on your shoes to get across there, or you're just like sliding everywhere. And then there's even some spots where there's the top of the snow is icy, and so you're running on top of the snow, on ice, and then if it can be hilly, and so your sled is just like flying all around, because I was on this one section where it was on top of the snow, and on top of the snow was ice, and it was hilly, but it was also windy. So the wind was like blowing my sled across, like up in front of me and to the side of me, and then my sled would like slide down the hill and want to pull me down the hill, and so luckily I had spikes on my shoes to like keep from sliding too much.
Jeez.
But yep, and I wore like kind of like a mesh base layer that kind of keeps the keep from sweating too much, and then I wear like just like a pair of Gore-Tex. Well, I mean, I get more like a soft shell pant, and like a mesh base layer top, and then just like a smart wool long sleeve base layer over that. Then just like an Arc'teryx puffy jacket over that, and that's what I wore most of the time. And I would just kind of like keep it like unzip. I would have like controlled the temperature by like zipping up and down that jacket, and then I have like a really heavy down jacket for like when it got cold.
So when you're out there, it sounds like these checkpoints, there's places to sleep or these safety cabins where you could rest. Did you ever have just to sleep out just on the ground?
Oh yeah, well, because I mean they're like sometimes 40, 50, 60 miles apart, so I mean you're not gonna hit it at the right spot every time, and to where you're like, okay, that's where I'm gonna sleep. So there would be times where I'd be like, okay, I'm just like, it's in the middle of the night and I'm just super tired right now, and it'd be like 2:00 in the morning, and I would just run until I got tired. That's how I basically gauged I would just like basically run until I couldn't run anymore. That's how I gauged when I would need to sleep. So I would sometimes I would go through the night, and if I would make it through the night and into the next day, I could just keep on going, and then I maybe sleep the next night. But sometimes I'd be running through the night and I'd be like, oh yeah, I gotta stop and sleep. And sometimes I would put out my sleeping bag, and they call it bivvying, because you're supposed to have like a little bivy sack to put your sleeping bag in, which is just like basically a sack to put your sleeping bag in. It's just a cover, and so when I would bivvy down and in my sleeping bag, and one morning I woke up and it was like negative 30 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, how fast can I get out of the sleeping bag and pack everything up and get on the trail and start running again before I get like too cold? Because I knew as soon as I get out of that sleeping bag, I was just going to start getting cold. Because no matter what I had on, I mean, my feet get cold first, and it's just hard to get them warmed up again. So it would just take me like about a minute and a half to like get out of my sleeping bag, put everything back in the bag on my sled, and get everything going, and start running down the trail to keep my feet warm and my hands warm. And but sometimes I would, if it wasn't too cold and I was getting tired, I would just sit on my sled and take a little nap. And I know the only way I would wake up is when I got cold. So I would sit there and I'd fall asleep because I was so tired, and then I'd wake up because my hands would start to get cold, and then that was when I knew it was time to go. And
that was the alarm clock.
That was like, yep. My hands getting cold was the alarm clock. Yep. And it usually only take like 20 20 to 30 minutes before I was too cold.
So, something I'd like to hear a little bit about is a lot of my guests talk about like their first 100, their first 200, 250, 300, and how life changing it is, and they just feel like they've accomplished this huge thing, which obviously they have. It is a big accomplishment. Right. But what does that feeling feel like finishing a 1,000-mile race over a whole month? I'd love to hear about that.
I was like pretty lucky because my wife was able to meet me at Nome at the finish line, and so I didn't really think that was going to happen until like about the second half of the race. She said she was gonna try to meet me there, and I was like, oh man, that's gonna be so cool. And so the whole time I'm running out there, I'm thinking about the finish. I'm thinking about meeting her and thinking about finishing the race, and just how it's going to be. And just during the race, thinking about the finish line, I became emotional at times. And then so as I got closer, and I got into Nome, and I was just like miles from the finish. It was like about noon, and I was just like thinking how cool it was going to be. And then there came a point where I could see her standing in, like on the sidewalk in Nome, and she was like about a half mile up there, or maybe less, and I could just see a figure, and I just knew it was her standing there, and white, but as I got closer to Nome, eventually a sidewalk came, and then like little houses started coming on the side of the trail, and then eventually I could see up there was like a little town, and then I'd pass like a little school, and then I know Nome was pretty close, and then eventually I could see like a little town up there, and then eventually I could see like this little figure standing on the side of the trail up there, and I was just like, oh, I just know that's Marilyn. And so I just like start running even faster. But at this point, my body is so sore, I'm just like, I'm reduced to a hike. And so every once in a while I can get up enough energy to like move a quick little shuffle. But then I get so exhausted, I have to like just go back down to a hike again. And so I can see her up there, and we finish at the same finish line the dog sled race finishes at. And so there's this big wood finish line that they made for the dog sled race, and that the ITI finishers get to finish at as well. And so a little bit of it is anticlimactic, and you kind of build it up in your mind. It's going to be a bigger thing than it is. But when I met my wife, we're like both kind of just hugging each other and crying, thinking how awesome it is, and to see each other again after 30 days, almost 30 days. And she walked with me to the finish line, and they take a picture of me there, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it doesn't really sink in till later, till like we go to a little apartment for the finishers. Everybody's kind of talking there. The finishers are talking, and I'm just like so exhausted. I take a little nap there, and then we have to catch a plane from Nome to Anchorage. So everyone who like finished that day catches the same plane, and there's like one plane every day, and so all the finishers that day catch that plane. And so I'm there with a few other people, and my buddy who finished on skis. And then it doesn't really hit me until we're walking through the Anchorage airport. I'm basically pulling my sled through the Anchorage airport, and just thinking,
Awesome.
wow, that was just that was amazing. And I'm picking up my sled and carrying it at times, and then dropping it, and then just pulling it at times, and just thinking about everything that happened, every day, all the challenges that happened, everything that I overcome, the whole race, the amount of miles, the distance, and the storms, the food that I had to eat. It was just like, just everything was just so overwhelming, and it was yeah, no, it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. You know, I've finished some longer ultra marathon distances, and that finish line feeling was so exciting for so many months. I can't imagine what 1,000-mile finish over a whole month would feel like. You know, for it would probably carry me for quite some time. And
Oh yeah, I
having your
mean,
wife there, that sounds
yeah.
just so amazing to have her at the
Hmm.
finish and have that reunion there. The whole story is just so awesome.
Yeah, but I still probably think about it almost every day. Some experience in the race that I had, I think about almost every day. It seems like.
Well, I kind of wonder for you, is it going to be still challenging and exciting to go back to like a traditional ultra marathon, you know, like a Moab 240 or Arizona Monster?
Yeah.
I don't know how you transition back into a shorter distance, and you know, obviously each one of them has challenges and there's different scenarios, but a whole month is just it's unbelievable. But have you thought about doing other races after that, or are you going to kind of
Yeah.
stick with the ITI?
Nope. I don't think I'm going to go back up there. I mean, I said that last time too, but um, after ITI, that last year after I ran it, I signed up for the Tahoe 200,
Mm.
and me and a couple buddies went down there. Well, went down with Lance too.
Oh, right on.
Lance and I and Chad, another buddy, and then another buddy of mine named Matt. We all went down to Tahoe, and that's like the best part about all these races is the camaraderie. I mean, it's the people you meet, it's your buddies that you're running with, it's the experiences that you're having out there together, and so I mean that of course that's what, and so basically, so then after Tahoe, my knee started hurting, and so I haven't ran. So about a month after Tahoe, my knee started hurting so bad, I couldn't run anymore, and I haven't really ran since then because I've been waiting to get a surgery on my knee, and I don't get my
What
surgery
happened to
until
you?
I basically every doctor I've gone to, they say in the MRIs that I have, they say my knee, my meniscus is so bad, it's so tore up. That's what's causing a lot of the pain. But also they say the arthritis that I have in my left knee is not gonna. They can't. The only way they can fix that is a total knee replacement. So I have to get a total knee replacement in my left knee in February.
Wow, what's the recovery time for that? That sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's not great. I just got a surgery on my shoulder last week because I tore my rotator cuff, and that's been a little tough. But I think my knee is going to be even worse. uh, but I know some runners who have knee surgeries who have total knee replacements and still run 100 miles. So
Wow.
maybe you've heard of a runner named Davy Crockett.
No, I haven't.
Oh, anyway, he's from Utah, and he's a really big ultra runner, and he has run a lot of 100-mile races. Anyway, he's had 2 knee replacements. I mean, basically a double knee replacement, one on each knee, and he still runs 100-mile races. I mean, he's not as fast, and he doesn't run as much, But um, and so that'll be like probably like it'll be like my 12th finish when I run in Cascade this summer.
Wow. Yeah, and do they have anything past the 10-year jacket? Maybe like the 20-year jacket?
Nope, no one's done it 20 years.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I'm genuinely saying that I really don't have much to say. This is just such an amazing story. It's so, and I know I've said this, but it's so outside the realm of my understanding or my reality that I'm hearing this and I'm trying to take it all in, and it's just incredible. Um, and you mentioned Lance. I actually just had him on the podcast again, um, and he's incredible, and just such a small world, right? That we know Lance, and then I'm buddies with your cousin. It's just such
Right,
it's such a small world, and that's kind of why I do this, Brandon, is because there's so many stories. I mean, you have this amazing story, and no one's really telling these stories, and that's kind of why I'm trying to do this podcast. Is there's so many amazing people out there doing really incredible things, and it's so inspiring for people to hear these stories. So I genuinely thank you for sharing your story, and I know we got the Cliff Notes version, but it's I'm sure there's a ton more. You know,
yep,
you've got a ton of stories, I'm sure, in 30 days of doing the ITI that you just
yep,
gave us the Cliff Notes version. But thank you so
yep.
much. I really like to let my guests have the final word, where anything you want to share with people about running, or maybe shout out somebody. Your wife sounds like an amazing crew member,
Oh, yep, she
shipping
is.
things back and forth and being there for you. So whatever you want to say to round us out, I'd love to give you that last word.
Well, I mean, I probably don't. This is probably a common thread, probably a common inspiration. What a lot of runners say. If they don't say it, they definitely feel it, because once you start running ultra races, ultra marathons, you come to the knowledge that you can do more than you think you can do. You can go farther than you think you can go. Your body can go longer. You can push it farther, push it harder than you thought you could. And so then, of course, that bridges not only over to in running, but over to basically every other facet of your life, that you can just do more than you think you can do. And it definitely has helped me, and I've definitely seen it in the people that I associate with. They tell me, they were following me out there on the up in Alaska, and they said, they will say something like, because you were out there doing what you were doing, I feel like I was able to accomplish more in my life. And that was just like an inspiration to me, and it's so neat that running can have that effect on other people, and it's not accomplishing more than you think you can accomplish. It spreads. It's contagious. People will see it, and they realize they can do more too. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I completely agree with what you said. It really is. And I mean, you've inspired me. I'm sitting here soaking in this story, and I'm just feeling so inspired. And like, boy, I got to get back out there and log a lot more miles and get a lot more adventures under my belt.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. This has been so awesome. And you have an amazing support system, and it just sounds like, obviously you have another challenge to go through with the knee, but I can't imagine you're the type of person that just sits it out after you get a knee surgery. So I know you'll keep doing
Yep.
keep doing things and finding new adventures. But thank you again, and I really appreciate your time, Brandon.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Christian.
You bet. Thank you.